This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Hello, Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, numbers have been in the news this week, some good, some challenging. For the good are the latest figures on violent crimes, which have declined. Challenging are the details in a settlement between the archdiocese and a committee representing clergy sex abuse victims. And in politics, there are new numbers in the New Orleans mayor's race. We'll be looking at these stories as well as why the Metairie Towers building is now being put up for auction. And we will see hidden camera video of trash dumping in isolated areas. We begin, though, with a showdown between Orleans criminal court judges and Sheriff Susan Hutson, who is now facing a contempt of court charge. In our number are our Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Stephanie Riegel, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, LeBron Joseph, news anchor and reporter, WGNO-TV, Channel 26, and Mike Pearlstein, investigative reporter, WWL Louisiana, Channel 4. And go over to Mike first, because what is it with this contempt of court charge against the Orleans Parish Sheriff?
Well, it's no longer just a charge. The judges en banc, as a group, 7 of them did find Sheriff Susan Hutson in violation of their order, and she's been found in contempt of criminal court. And this all is over staffing the magistrate court hearings on the weekends. That got suspended during COVID, as did all court hearings. They were held virtually. Still, people get arrested, have to have first appearances, bail set. That was going on inside the courthouse and on Zoom virtually. And everything resumed back to normal during the week, and magistrate held in the morning and in the afternoons. It has not resumed on weekends or holidays. And the judges began, once the COVID emergency lifted in 2023, to start requesting that these hearings resume in person inside the courthouse. That later turned into an order by the judges, and they indicated that they wanted to hold the hearings in person this last Saturday. Please produce the inmates, which for the sheriff's office means transporting the inmate defendants to court, having enough deputies to provide security during the hearings themselves. And she said, we simply don't have enough deputies to provide that service. We're short on resources, and so the hearings were not held in the courthouse at Tulane and Broad. That led to a hearing, an actual contempt of court, call it a mini trial, in the courtroom of Tracy Flemings-Davalier, the chief judge, and 6 other judges, in which it was a packed courtroom. It was really kind of an interesting proceeding because the sheriff brought deputies and her support staff, and then on the other side, all kinds of members of the bar and interested parties packed that courtroom and heard about 2+ hours of argument. Really, the attorney for the sheriff, John Williams, getting grilled by the judges, and the sheriff, had her explanation, which is, look, we have budget woes, we have trouble, retaining deputies. We just don't have the people to provide that on the weekends. The judges, after hearing the arguments and going back and forth, they basically had deliberations for about 10 minutes, came back and said, you're held in contempt of court. Now, the attorney for sheriff immediately vowed to appeal, and what we don't know is what's going to happen tomorrow when the judges put her and her office on notice that we are going to expect in-person magistrate court hearings Saturday morning. Please bring the inmates and provide security. So that part's still up in the air. Now, the penalty for contempt of court, it's $500 per violation. presumably she could be held on, one violation so far, which was the past Saturday. Each subsequent violation could be another $500, and or including a jail time. Unlikely, but that's the penalty for contempt.
Which means that she would go to her own jail?
Be one of the busiest times on Saturday morning after Friday night, wouldn't it?
You might think, and sometimes during major events, and people say pack the quarter, but it's really pretty random when arrests are made. There is no specific, set day, like it's, more inmates always on, say, after a Friday or Saturday night. Doesn't quite work like that.
But Mike, the in-person hearings have been held during the week?
Oh yeah, that's fully resumed, and
So the problem is the weekends.
That's right. It's the judges in the sections aren't holding trials and motions. It's just the first appearances, which is the bail setting in magistrate court. That's the one thing that hasn't resumed. And it finally came to a head. And let's put this into some context. Sheriff Susan Hutson is already, embattled in her re-election campaign with two formidable opponents, Michelle Woodfork, interim NOPD superintendent, now working at the DA's office, and Edwin Shorty, a constable over in Algiers.
Right.
So this is the last thing she needed after the jail escape on May 16th.
With one inmate still out there.
Derek Gross still at large, and here she is now, basically convicted of contempt of court.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll see what tomorrow brings then. All right, Mike. Thanks a lot. Steph, over to you, because some new developments in the clergy sex abuse.
New developments and long awaited. The archdiocese and the court-appointed committee that has been negotiating with them for 5 years on behalf of all the abuse survivors filed a joint reorganization plan, basically a settlement plan spelling out how they hope to end this long-running bankruptcy case. They had announced in May basically a tentative agreement where they said what the plan would do, and this just puts all the meat on the bones and also, spells out the language that's going to go out in a ballot to the survivors later this year, and they'll have an opportunity to vote on it, and 2/3 of the survivors do have to approve it. But, in case you forgot, the plan is basically $179 million that would come from the archdiocese as well as its parishes and charitable organizations, at least most of them. And it includes some insurance settlement money from some of the church insurance companies. One of the biggest church insurers, Travelers Insurance, which insured the archdiocese for like 20 years in the 70s and 80s, has not settled yet. So abuse claimants would be free to sue them. It also does not include money from Christopher Homes, which is the portfolio of low-income senior apartment complexes, but that's anticipated to bring in another $30, $40, or even $50 million that would be divided among survivors. So all in, it'll probably end up being a $200 million plus plan that would be divided among the claimants, not equally. So far, more than 660 claims have been filed. Some of those are going to be likely tossed out, but we don't know how many yet.
So there is opposition to this proposal, right?
There is opposition to this proposal. What's sort of interesting about it is that it was jointly filed by the committee that's supposed to be negotiating on behalf of abuse survivors. But there is a very, very powerful and influential group of trial attorneys who represent many of the abuse victims in the case individually, and they are opposed to it. Now, we don't know exactly how many, and just because the lawyers have been fighting some aspects of this plan, that doesn't mean that their clients would necessarily vote against it, but some of them have already said they will. You have to remember, a lot of the abuse victims that are represented by this group were sort of the first to the courthouse. They had filed lawsuits before the church filed bankruptcy. They had gone through the painful discovery process. Some of these survivors experienced the worst of the abuse, and their cases were frozen when the church filed bankruptcy. So they were already, really aggrieved by this. And then there were a lot of other things that happened. You know, some of them were kicked off of the official court-appointed abuse survivors committee once there was a bankruptcy case because their lawyer allegedly leaked to the media some things, and then the judge imposed a very, very steep fine on that lawyer, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. It was just a mess. But that has just fed into a lot of the tension that has colored this case.
What's the timeline now?
It's
from
a
where
tight
we are now?
timeline because the judge says she wants this thing done by the end of the year, and that if they haven't reached a settlement and the survivors have not approved it, then she's going to dismiss the case. Whether or not she does, that remains to be seen. But so basically, we're now into August almost. If she approves this document and the ballot language that was filed later this month after a hearing, those will go out. There will be a vote in October. There will be what they call a confirmation hearing in late November into early December. And if the plan is approved, then it goes into effect at the end of the year. But 2/3 of the abuse survivors have to vote for it. You have other classes of creditors too, and the bondholders, who are very important in this, they're very much against it as well. They are now threatening to sue the church for securities fraud, and probably will, but they're not secured creditors. Unlike a bank, for instance, like Whitney Bank is a secured creditor. I don't know why the bondholders were not secured debt, but they're not. So they're kind of in line with the other survivors. That's also complicating this whole process.
So it's a big if this is approved.
Yeah, and I can't. I mean, I don't want to like give you my sense right now of how it is, but there are still a lot of big questions hanging out there. Yeah.
Okie doke. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. All right, let's go on over to you, LeBron, because you're talking about tire dumping and efforts to try to stop it. But this has been going on for a long time.
Not only tires, but just dumping, outright dumping. That we've got some video we shot earlier this week out off of Michoud exit, and this is a chronic issue that's been going on for some time. We'll take a look at some of that video, but. What is different is that several agencies have sort of stepped up their efforts. The NOPD certainly has began to get behind and execute several arrests. Part of what folks need to realize, and I think they are, the people that are out here, committing these crimes, is that there are cameras everywhere, and the use of the technology has ramped up, not only for our local agencies, but some of the state agencies as well. This is up along the Michoud exit, I should say, and that's just a small part, just up along one stretch there. But as you can tell, a lot of this stuff has been out there for some time.
It's a mess.
Yeah, and their mattresses and all that. In the last 2 weeks, there have been rearrests, 2 Slidell residents, another man who was arrested once back on June 9th. He's wanted for 2 additional incidents on June 18th and June 23rd.
This is after he was caught.
After he was caught, paid a fine and all that other stuff. And the fine is for gross littering. That's what the...
So how much is this fine?
The gross littering one is $2,500.
Okay, and does it go up if you're a repeat offender?
Yes, it certainly goes up if you're a repeat offender. But just today, we received 3 different person of interest reports from the NOPD, and it wasn't all in New Orleans. One was 7th District in the East, another one 4th District over in Algiers, another one 3rd District in Gentilly. And each of these had a person's picture, and also there was a picture of the vehicles, which lets you know that we're looking now. Now, the agency that has been doing this for some time now is actually the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. They have been doing this around the state with the cameras and all that. And by the way, these agencies don't necessarily want folks to know that they're being watched, but this is the tool to let them know, and it should act as a deterrent, right?
Right. I mean, you are being watched. Like you said, more and more cameras are going out there to watch you, too, if you're going to do this.
Yes. And the Wildlife and Fisheries folks, just as I said, they've been at it for some time, not only our parks and places like that, but, a lot of this is just, folks throwing littering. The guy gets rid of the tire there. There's a family that pulls up, where they're dumping things. Yeah, the whole dump truck and all of that. Yeah, that makes us all angry. And this is all different locations. And the point I'm making, here's a family with the kids and all. All of these folks, by the way, have been prosecuted, if you will. These cases have been settled for the most part. However, there are many. It's not just Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries. It's not just NOPD. It is also Department of Transportation and Development. A lot of these guys are beginning to work together. That shot just a minute ago was guys dumping construction stuff. And it's a problem that it's a welcome sign to see that there's actually movement. Now, even here on the local side where we're trying to get some help, and we are getting help from the NOPD to sort of really prosecute this. But message to the dumpers, they're cameras, and they're everywhere.
You mentioned that, alleged repeat offender, and I guess he, paid a fine.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, with such a volume in the tires especially, if there's kind of being viewed as a cost of doing business, and that he's dumping for a lot of other people.
Lieutenant Wolf of the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, we spoke with him this week, and he said that a number of these guys just run hauling businesses and all. They're picking up stuff from construction sites. They're picking up stuff from someone trying to throw things away and all that. It's not like these guys are pulling stuff from their houses. I mean, I imagine some of the folks throwing the bag over the bridge and all, that's probably household stuff.
Right.
But these guys are operating.
But there are places to bring like this bulk stuff and tires. There are legitimate
places you can bring them. He also mentioned that in terms of tires, you not only need to bring that to a specified place that accepts tires, you have to be permitted in order to transport a large number of tires.
And that's a whole problem in and of itself.
Yes.
I remember reporting on that years ago.
That is correct.
All over the state.
That is correct. And so we're having those issues. And, obviously, I'm just thrilled to death to sort of see that these cameras catch these guys. It is such a terrible problem that we've got to, do better.
So, and you're being watched. So
and
if
you're being
you
watched.
do it, you smile at the camera.
You kind of can't do anything out here without being watched.
No, that's true
on
nowadays.
the roads. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, LeBron. Mike, over to you. Good news in that violent crime numbers are down in the city.
And down dramatically. This is, maybe an even underplayed story, but these things unfold gradually, over weeks, months, and usually it's not until you get the year's worth of stats before you, declare a successful year. And right now, the city is at 55 homicides for 2025. We're well past the halfway point. This puts us on track to have the lowest murder rate in the city in 50 years.
Wow.
That's pretty remarkable. Non-fatal shootings are likewise down, almost a similar amount. And with crime rates, they're notoriously hard to sort of pin down all of the factors responsible. But in this case, you do see some factors that are pretty obvious. One is that there's a downturn in violent crime nationwide. New Orleans is not just among those major cities, but among the leaders in violent crime reduction. Baltimore's setting all-time lows. Detroit's doing well. So some of the traditionally high violent crime cities, are right there in New Orleans, in some cases leading the pack. They also have a pretty interesting dynamic. The NOPD, which at its peak had 1,600 officers, that's 900 officers now out on the street. And so it really begs the question, how are fewer officers presiding over such a tremendous reduction in crime? Well, you have the solve rate is hitting close to all-time highs as well. And that's a really interesting dynamic. It's led a little bit by smart policing. It's led by technology. You mentioned the cameras catching, people dumping
even license plate readers.
License plate readers, obviously in defendants on ankle bracelets who can be tracked. And the NOPD is now getting very fluent in the use of these different technologies. And what happens with solve rate is that it gives the public confidence that when they call, when they give a tip, when they report something, and that they see results, somebody gets arrested, it feeds on itself, and you actually end up with other people more willing to call in. They're getting a great community buy-in. They're getting good response to things like Crime Stoppers tips. And, all of that is a great trend. I know that, individual police officers don't always like to talk about it being superstitious and not wanting to jinx, a really good trend. But the trend is real. It started last year. COVID was an anomaly, but then by, 2022, we were at 265 murders. We're on pace now to be maybe below 110.
Wow.
So just to give you the,
huge.
the
Still a lot, but just
perspective.
definitely an improvement, that's for sure.
When you consider,
Right.
like the bad old days, New Orleans was
300 and 400.
80
Yeah.
plus per 100,000. We're now below 40 per 100,000, so that's flat,
that's
cut in half, and maybe lower. So a lot of things going right, and that's a big positive. And mind you, community groups, nonprofits, NOLA Coalition,
Right.
with programs on the front end as a kind of deterrent with dealing, with youth, kids,
Yeah, that has
juvenile
a big part in
offenders,
it, too.
before they
Absolutely.
escalate, all are playing a role.
All of that combines. All right,
And when you talk
good
about-
trend that we want to see continue. We're going to need to move on to you,
Okay.
because you wanted to talk about the mayor's race in the city now.
Yes, I do. Okay.
Yes, you do.
So we're in the mayor's race. I think there's really 3 phases to an election, like a mayor's race. The first phase is before qualifying. That's when anything is possible. All the rumors are out there, and that goes on and on. Then the second phase is after qualifying. Qualifying was last week, so now we know who's running. People will be able to make a statement. And that phase is between qualifying and Labor Day for New Orleans and the mayor's race. Labor Day is really when the politicking really starts, when you have a fall election, which this case will be in October. And so this is where people are positioning themselves, raising their money. You might see some people drop out during this time. And then Labor Day kind of gets on, all the jets are on, and everybody is running. And so we're in that second phase right now. The past week, I think, has been a good week for Moreno. First of all, she's way ahead in the fundraising. She's got $1.7 million. Oliver Thomas is second with $434,000. Duplessis, $166,000. Nobody else is close, but she was there early, so she's got that going for her. She got the endorsement of the AFL-CIO, which is a prestigious and important endorsement. And her television commercial started. She's the only one, at least that I've seen, with television commercials. I got to tell you, when she does the one-on-one cameras, she's a former TV person. Okay, she knows she can kill a camera. Okay, she knows how to use it. So it's good on TV. Plus, she's got another one with like endorsements by local people, including Margaret Orr endorsing her, and they used to work together at Channel 6.
Right.
So she's got the Margaret Orr endorsements. So what more can you need? So it was good for her. I think at this point, where it seems to be heading is in October with the primary. If there's a runoff, it's going to be Moreno and either Thomas or Duplessis or Arthur Hunter, but probably, Thomas and Moreno. There's a good possibility there won't be a runoff, in which case it'd be Moreno. But we're there, and the final maneuvering is going on, and then the jets go on.
Although some people say with the addition of Royce Duplessis joining the race, that now increases the chances that she doesn't win in the first primary and it does go to a runoff.
Right,
Yeah.
it definitely changes the dynamics a bit. So, okay, we got to move on. Thanks a lot, E. We're going to wrap up with you, Stephanie. Metairie Towers, now it's on
really
the market again.
interesting because just a year ago, less than actually, a developer with deep New Orleans ties who now lives in Dallas, Darren Schaffenberg, bought it after his proposal to renovate the building was selected by the condo owners. You remember the building had been badly damaged.
Right.
He ended up paying $24.5 million for it.
Taking a look
had
at
a
it
very
right now.
ambitious plan there to totally gut it and reduce the number of units, create bigger, fancier ones, and put an 8th floor with giant penthouse luxury units on the top. Of course, this is in the middle of Old Metairie, sitting on 4 acres. Very, very
Prime
valuable
real
real
estate,
estate
yeah.
there. And he now says he got in over his skis. He spent a lot of money doing the permitting, the pre-construction, gutting
So he
the
has
building.
gotten in there doing some work, right?
Absolutely, and had plans for it. But now he says he needs to sell. Of course, this speaks to the very high interest rates, high construction costs, and just really the pressures that we've talked about across all the sectors of the real estate market. So auction is the quickest way to sell it, and he's got to get out before a bridge loan comes due in October. So he's putting it on the market for auction August 25th, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what it fetches.
While he was still doing this project, was he getting any nibbles? I mean, were people interested in buying into it?
Of course, he's trying to position it to go.
Right.
He says people were banging the doors down wanting to move in. Obviously, they were going to be expensive units. I mean, it was condos originally, then he was going to do high-end apartments, then he decided to go with high-end condos. And of course, the prices he would have needed to justify what it'll cost to do the building as nice as he wanted to was a lot for a market this size,
So it's on the market now, and to be auctioned. Is that
to
what you
be
said?
auctioned by
When
one of
is
the big
that?
online auction houses in late August, August
Okay.
25th. So gather your nickels and throw your hat in the ring.
It's an important piece of property
It's
there.
a very
in
important
Metairie.
piece of property, and I think somebody's going to want it. It's
Yep,
just a question
absolutely.
of what they get it for.
All righty, guys. Thanks. Other stories, E.
There are two men who were not well known a few months ago, but since then have gained worldwide prominence and prestige. One is the Pope, and the other is Superman. The Pope, of course, is Robert Prevost, and Superman is a guy named David Cornsweet. Both of them have roots in New Orleans, that the families go back to New Orleans. The Pope was raised in Chicago. Cornsweet was raised in Philadelphia, but their family roots are from New Orleans. Cornsweet's a very prominent family in uptown New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah. And when Cornsweet, and it's relevant to say that Cornsweet is Jewish, but he got married in 2023 in New Orleans. His wife was Catholic, and they were married at the Immaculate Conception Church, which we know as
Beautiful
Jesuit Church,
Oh.
which would probably please the Pope to know that. So anyway, so there's real tie-ins at high levels with New Orleans these days.
Righty, thanks. Stephanie, over to you.
Well, speaking of apartment sales, we did another story today. 1/3 of all the apartment units in New Orleans East are up for sale now because 4 very large complexes that were part of a bankruptcy are now being listed for sale, and not for auction, but they're accepting proposals, and it's going to be interesting to see what they go for. Yeah,
Absolutely. LeBron.
This morning we reported on the Deepwater Horizon settlement money, the $3.5 billion or the $3 billion that was supposed to be for the Mid-Barrett area diversion, to divert river water, to build coastline and all. Well, the state's walking away from it. No word on what happens with the $3 billion. Environmentalists say this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance for us to help build coastline. The governor says it's going to cost more than $3 billion, and it undermines our state's fishing industries.
All righty. Mike?
Just a
real
note
quick.
about hurricane season. Now we're fully in it. We just had, I guess it was a tropical disturbance. It never rose above that, but it just shows how on guard people are, officials, emergency management agencies, sandbags, and everything else. And with Katrina anniversary coming up in just over a month, I know there are a lot of events scheduled.
Yep.
I know I'm on a big panel. I'm doing some special reports for WWL, but it does raise the question: what if there is a storm that disrupts the anniversary? With the round number 20th anniversary is going to draw a lot of attention.
About to knock really hard on
We-
wood
Yeah,
here,
knock
Mike,
real
that
hard.
doesn't
All of us
happen.
need to knock right now. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. We're out of time. Thanks for being here. Thank you all for joining us. See you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.